Human-Driven Classroom, a practical guide to AI in education, instruction, policy, and governance. Our launch. There we go. Yes, yes. And Diogenes has also seen it. We're excited to officially say it's now on Amazon and available, and go over a few reasons why it's important for educators, for administrators, for presidents of schools, and for even teachers, individual teachers, to start getting up to speed.
The main premise of this book really is to act as a service guide for educators who are nervous about AI in education, how it's going to disrupt. Is it plagiarism? What is it going to do to the students, to their career? And it really gives them a step-by-step guide on it's not just how to use it in the classroom, maybe how to be an advocate to your students, to your institution, and really start to grow and blossom into maybe even a champion for your campus. It gives a lot of insight. And if you see in the back of the book, we actually have turned it into a bit of a workbook for reflection. And so with the resources and with the guidance, people will be able to take this book and actually, again, move into a variety of different aspects of AI integration and adoption. And we even apply things like governance and policy just to help give instructors or professors more of an outer classroom experience on how it can impact their institution as a whole.
And I've asked two friends to join us to add comments, questions.
If I can jump in, I just one of the things I just have to say is that originally I wasn't quite sure where this thing was headed. But after I looked at a copy of this and started going through it, it's amazing because one of the difficulties in education right now is you have teachers and administrators at all levels of understanding and confusion. And what I think is really important that this document does, this book is so timely, is that regardless of my level of experience, my level of acceptance or resistance to AI, this really allows me to dig in at whatever level I am to start my journey because AI is part of our lives. It's not going to go away. So as educators, this is fundamentally important for them to grasp. And I think the way it's presented, it gives me a pathway to really dive into this from what is this thing? How's it going to impact? What is my role? How can I utilize it as a tool? And I think it's an excellent resource for all educators at all levels. So great work, guys.
It's 15 chapters. It's very thorough. So I want to ask you though, the very first chapter you talk about fear, stupid AI. You want to explain what you mean by that? And also, what would you say are the top two or three big takeaways from the book for someone who is just curious about it, hasn't had a chance to read it, might want to buy it?
We've got an analogy we both love. It's AI in the world is like now the ocean's completely changed. It's exciting, but also dangerous. You've got young people that want to surf in it or don't want to surf in it. And trying to just stop from going into the water is not practical. But actually teaching them how to surf and also how to build the new skills for this new world to me is critical. And then let's start with the fear stupid AI. One of the most dangerous and seductive things about AI is that it sounds agreeable, it sounds validating, it sounds human, and we lose track of it. It is a tool. And once we lose track of it, that's when it becomes more dangerous because some people have named their AI and nothing wrong with doing that, but be cautious of losing track. This is a tool. This is a tool that follows algorithms, that follows a system that's trained on the entire world and all the biases of the world. And you want to keep that in perspective. And that's what this book helps and starts with. That's why it starts with fear stupid AI, that you need to realize it is a tool.
Right. And where I would go from that, I get asked about governance and what's your governance approach? How do you get people to really buy into it? And I think we saw 2025 in a lot of news headlines when you tried top down to where it's, you will use AI, you will do this, and your performance is impacted by how you use AI. There's always this unconscious or subconscious part of humanity where it's as soon as you're told to do something, there's a defiance. And I think it's as natural as the uncanny valley, where just as instinctually we get a little unnerved when we see something that's not natural, robotics, responses of language models. There's just as much of that instinctual pushback when we're told to do something. And so the approach that we have, and it's listed in this book, is look at your staff, your faculty, your students as individuals. You have to approach it from how can you create value? And so a big takeaway, as Dana asked in this book, is we provide you ways to create value. We provide examples of what does it look like in the classroom? What does it look like in a specific focus, such as trades in CTE is what we look at, career technical, and trade skills is what we look at as our actual applied and tested framework in this book. Obviously, I come from both trades and trades education, and so we took from some of the stuff that we've seen work. And so we provide examples of how do you utilize it safely, securely, and effectively. And when you look at it from how can I create value, whether that's improved time given back, cost savings, ROI. When you can create value and you can contribute in a way that reduces stress or increases capacity for your staff, your faculty, and your students, then you get natural buy-in. And so that's one takeaway you get from it. The second takeaway is there's a lot of nervousness around AI use. How do I make sure as an instructor I'm using it in a way that's not going to create backlash or cause any issues with my job, disciplinary functions, putting the wrong thing in? As a student, how am I using it responsibly so I don't get a failing grade or get called into the dean's office or anything like that? And so what does that look like? What does responsible AI actually mean? What does it mean to use it securely and effectively? What benefits do you have from having an open AI campus instead of just outright banning it? And so those are examples and takeaways that we give in the book. So that way, when somebody walks away and having read this book, and we have had these types of reviews already from people that have read it ahead of time, is it just opened their mind and expanded their understanding of what AI is, what it can do, and how it can benefit them. And if you walk away just having a new understanding of AI, and a better understanding of how it can help you, we've done our job with this book.
One of the things that really strikes me about um, getting my knowledge base up to speed at whatever level is the chapter 2 on understanding how large language models work. That is kind of a core mystery that I think is intimidating because many people understand or they think they know AI. I've heard of it. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. But large language models is kind of a mystery to a lot of people. They don't even know how it fits into the AI world. The fact that it's the foundation of a lot of this information that eventually gets delivered. So I think that chapter is so incredibly important, and the way you've broken it down really makes sense because it also talks about why the same prompt can produce different outputs. I mean, there's stuff in here that is gold. And as an educator, you really need to understand this because I think once you grasp this concept, your understanding of AI in general will become a little bit more easy to understand.
An example of a story of why this book's so important is the person who cleans our house, his daughter works with her, and she came to me and she says, I just found out I flunked a class. And I then went back and found out that they claimed that the paper I wrote was generated by AI. And then I sat down and I worked with them and I said, why don't you have me write something in front of you and evaluate it? And they did, and they found she's just a really good writer. And this type of false positive is one of the reasons why this book's so critical, because now she's not going to sue a school or anything like that, but there's some real vulnerabilities here in this brand new world, and we do our best to at least point to them. Of course, this isn't a legal document in any way, and you want to get professional advice on these things, but we give you the topics of what to look at, that you probably need a policy. And what would the policy involve? You need to start making sure you're evaluating these tools. And what would that look like? All of this is critical because the world has changed so fast. Someone needs to give us a basic tool. And thanks to Justin's experience and my great opportunity to do a breakout session for educators, it speaks in their world. So it's language to their world. It's not like something else. It uses terms and terminology that they're familiar with in the educational system.
Right. And on that note too, it's just as much protection. And so most educators, I genuinely believe, want to protect their students as much as they want to protect themselves and are obligated to protect their institution. But at the same time, we have this balancing act of how do we genuinely prepare our students for the world they're going to go into, to at the same time, how do we ensure that we're compliant? And that can be a stressful balancing act. And so uniquely, I teach both on a university level, and I've taught and administrated in continuing education. So I've operated in both the very structured 16-week, SACS regulated setting, and also the very rapid, agile, almost small business setting that Con Ed, or continuous education, is known for. And so I've seen the pendulum from both sides. And what is so wild is, I and a lot of other educators out there, I don't look at just you got your certificate, it was nice knowing you. It's how will Mike use this skill to get a job when he's got a third kid on the way? Or I know Stephanie is working at a medical office right now, and there's a opening she's told me about, and she's right there ready for it. And so how can, say, an AI skill on top of medical administration or whatnot give her that edge to where she's a shoe-in that's going to change her life through a variety of different ways? And so we have to look at that. We are impacting. I think in some ways, higher education, it gets lost on some levels of why we're doing what we're doing. And why I say that is because when it comes to AI specifically, something as simple as a syllabus can be a huge thing, and it's a huge focus in our industry not right now, where we have to hold students accountable, yes, but we also have to be transparent as educators on how we are going to leverage AI and use it. It is becoming less so of a here's what we expect in the class to almost a contractual agreement with our students as AI becomes more prolific or more integrated into education. And so that's a few of the things we talk about in the book is, how can we succeed as educators while still protecting ourselves and making sure we're compliant in this new kind of, it's almost like an industrial revolution in just education right now.
And one of the things that I think we're experiencing now is the conflict between governance and assessment, because as administrators in an educational system, you need to be able to assess your students. And if you don't have a level playing field that you all agree upon which you're going to do those assessments, evaluations, it's like playing different sports without any rules. It just becomes chaos. So I think as an educator and as an administrator, understanding what this is, what it really is, and how it is applied and how it can be used and misused will give me better understanding and perhaps a better legislative approach to how can we create a standard by which we're going to apply ourselves. And I think I heard NPR the other day that all the states are struggling with this. Everybody's struggling with this, and so far, adults have not been able to come up with this. So they did. I think they got all these kids from different schools together. Did you guys hear about this? All these kids from different schools together, and they they play acted like they were in the Senate, and then they went ahead and did their uh, how can we construct policy, and they came up with I think something that they all agreed upon, and I saw some of the points, and it's actually really good. So I think we're in a time where we're just looking at how can we get a handle on this, and this book really gives us a very level way to understand and approach AI within the context of education.
Along those lines, I've heard some school systems are this year banning personal devices like phones, personal laptops, tablets. So, from a practical standpoint, if I'm a school system and I want to embrace AI and use it, but I have that kind of policy, does that suggest then that maybe they used a closed AI system only available on the school computers? How's that work for someone wondering, the school system, how to implement from a hardware standpoint this AI?
And that's what it would communicate to me. However, that doesn't seem to be giving students the credit they're due. One thing about students is they're innovative and they will always find a way around something. And what that really says to me, it's almost like the late 90s, early 2000s when everything was whitelisted or blacklisted, and you'd sit in a class and all of a sudden a teacher would want to show you a tool, but it wasn't whitelisted. So you had to call IT, and it was kind of like, we'll approach that another day after IT's put the ticket in to have everything whitelisted. And so you're really choking innovation. Now, I know Martin and I, we advocate for the responsible, secure, and profitable use of AI in North Carolina. And we want to see all organizations across North Carolina innovate and be profitable. And what I'll say about that, to Dana's point, is I'm seeing less and less of that in North Carolina. North Carolina's got a rich history of innovation. It's what we really thrive off of. And look at Research Triangle Park and industry. And so what I'm really starting to see, members such as the community college system, private participants, Martin and Dana, I know you're involved, Diogenes, you're involved, as well as NC State, Duke, the UNC system. AI is one thing that I'm seeing that is bringing individuals from all backgrounds together to try to solve this. And what I would really like to say is, even to the governor's office with his initiative, which I do some work for as an AI innovator for the state, is rather than purely shutting it down or banning it or turning a blind eye in North Carolina, what North Carolina specifically is doing is facing it head on and seeing how can we integrate as much usage as we can in education and business and everything responsibly, and really truly build a framework toward preparing an AI-centric workforce. Some states, like Dana said, I'm seeing where the whole state's initiative is to just turn a blind eye to it and try to run away from it. I will say, in good partnership with states like, I believe, Iowa, Michigan, Mississippi are innovators in it. I really do think, to an extent, North Carolina is leading the way. I know California, it's a hot topic there, but a lot of what they look at is policy and governance more so than anything. I would say North Carolina is the top on my deck as far as innovation. And so the timing is really rich for a book like this, because what we want to contribute to is, if we're going to be innovating, if we're all going to be working together, then one of the things that we need is a pathway that really leads us down the right track. And if we can contribute to the pathway, my goal is 50 years from now, when future generations have already figured it out, that one of the books that they teach in first grade is Human Driven Classrooms, by Martin Brosman and Justin Rose, as a framework for what we build it on. And that's really at the core, is how can we contribute to the overall mission, by preparing, because this is a book that an instructor can pick up, an administrator can pick up, but I'd recommend to a student as well, just so they can learn, but then also see where their professors coming from when they make certain decisions in the classroom.
Well, that term human driven, that came out of actually working on in a business sense about AI. And the industry has said it's important to keep humans in the loop. That's what they've been saying for the last couple of years. And Justin, Martin, and myself, we were like, well, what do you mean? That sounds kind of passive. And there's this fear AI is going to take over the world in many respects. And we argue that rather than it being a passive player, human driven is the key. And you all obviously adopted that for your book here, which I think is a strong sends a strong message to those that fear AI for good reason to keep humans in charge.
Yes,
That's right.
and
And go
I
ahead.
do think, Justin, we need to give credit. I think Dana was the one that first coined the term, and as far as we all worked together on this, so we need to let credit be in. But that's it. This is a way to make educators better, to make education better, and but also. Justin and I are very sensitive to the workload of educators. We didn't want this just to be more stuff you have to do. This is something that we encourage teams in an educational system meeting on a regular basis. This isn't going to be, I took a 4-hour course, now I'm good to go. We encourage a dynamic structure to support educators ongoingly, not just have a policy to start, but ways to ongoingly keep up because it's changing so fast. So when we produced the book, we knew we're just going to start with high level, but some specific things they can do to get started, and also design the book so in a year or a half a year, it'll be easy for us to update it. So by the intrinsic design, it was through the eyes of the schools, the administrators, the educators. And I want to just state, Justin, I get dinner at a local place, and there's a young woman who's in high school who I showed the book to who wants to be a teacher. She goes, how can I get this to read? So I said, I'll get you a copy, but you have to give us feedback on it. So she's excited to get it. She just got approved for teaching, but she was looking through it and goes, I need to know this, wanting to get into education. And that's what we were committed to. This is something that touches on all those areas.
Right.
One of the things that strikes me about where we are in this whole technological development is the fact that the more I know about what exists, the more prepared I am to know where it's headed. And unless you really understand some of the stuff, or at least get a glimpse, and the nice thing about the way you put the book together is that I don't have to read it from beginning. I can skip around. I can come back and say, gee, what is this? And come back and revisit this again. And I'm glad to hear that you're going to update this, because you guys are going to be very busy, because this is not going to stop. It's going to keep changing. And one of the things that I can see coming is eventually we'll get to the point where, okay, so we have all these large language models, blah, 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 blah. But now we're going from having large language models out there in the ecosphere to having it on our local laptops. What does that mean? And so you can take us and prepare us, especially from an education standpoint, how all these things might impact us. And I also will venture to guess that if you have two educators, one grasping this book as a resource and one not, I will have to say one is going to be a much more effective educator than the one that doesn't. And that really makes a huge, huge impact on our young people.
Guys, I'm sure a lot of people listening are curious about the use of AI from a student standpoint, appropriate versus maybe inappropriate use. And I recall when you guys were talking about putting this all together several months ago, we were talking about how a really smart student will use it to improve themselves, do better work. And then for the sake of argument, let's say not necessarily less smart, but someone that's a little on the lazy scale, as a student might use it as a crutch, okay, to make up for. So can you describe some things that can can help administrators who are, again, thinking about this? How do I manage this in the classroom, given the dynamics of a diverse set of students?
And that's one thing that I do often get when teaching. For example, I integrate AI into all of my classes. So I'll use, say, conflict management is one class that I do integrate AI in. And some people do call it bold. And so what I do is, of course, the primary reason they're in the class is to learn how to uh, resolve and manage conflict. And that's our main primary focus. And any of the classes I teach, we start off with looking at the logic of what is knowledge, what is intelligence, what is wisdom, how are they different? How are they the same? How do you use them? And that's the basis of, everything we do, logic. And so we begin from that, but then I do start to integrate AI eventually. And the focus I have in AI is twofold. One, I'm exposing you to it so you know how to use it effectively, safely, responsibly. But as far as your grade is concerned in this class, you're graded primarily on how well you critique it, that you don't trust it, that you have to critique it, but you do also have to state where it did well. And so there's two functions there. One, they're using it and they're critiquing it. So they're learning, they're flexing that muscle, building that muscle of I can't trust everything it says. But then in doing so, in order for them to critique it well enough, they have to understand the curriculum and the concept well enough to critique it. And so it's reinforcing their understanding of the subject. Now, with current college age, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, the alphabetical generations that we have, one of the big things that's coming out of that is they don't trust AI. Right now in the workplace, I saw a recent report the other day that Gen Z as a whole, or in a large part of it, at least the sample study that I think it was Vice might have pulled, I can follow up with that source, was that they claim that they sabotage AI initiatives at work because they're afraid it's going to take their job, that it's going to work them out of a career before they ever start. And so that is one thing I see in some of my students. And we have an open discussion on it. Do you like it? Do you not like it? Are you afraid of it? And we really broach that fact. And what I teach them is that we're still a great, maybe decade or more away from it really taking our job, but we are already working in an environment to where if you're augmented with it, then you're powerful. And that's for someone, who's midway through my career, or however you want to judge that. And so I'm saying at 19, 20, 21, you're coming out with a 4-year degree or a 2-year degree, and you've mastered AI fluency. You have a whole career. What you have is time. You have, in time and mastery of AI, what you're competing with individuals who are in the later part of their career who have the experience, but experience is something that is in large part starting to be able to be cataloged and categorized to a degree. It is being changed into data. And so for you to be at the start of your career at that form of mastery, and even in the understanding of the content, you're a unicorn. You're powerful, but you do have to really embrace it. I said, if not, like you mentioned earlier, for the student who doesn't embrace it, you're starting at a disadvantage well beyond 10 years ago, the difference between non-traditional, going into a career with a high school diploma and going to a career with a 4-year degree. They had a better chance of succeeding than now a 4-year degree or a master's, and the difference is AI or non-AI.
Yeah.
Another, go ahead. Go
Yeah,
ahead,
I
Doug.
just want to jump in because those are really great points, and I can't help but to smile because I know a lot of students are, there's a lot of resistance, but your chapter 8 on why the trades are different is just, to me, it's like really kind of really interesting to read because you, you have a line in there reference about AI. There's certain things AI can never do, and I think to your point. Justin, is the more I understand, the less afraid of it I can become because I now understand. And I think being led by fear is self-destructive. You're not doing yourself justice It's like any other tool. It's a tool, and we need to understand it and utilize it well. Yeah.
And part of this is how do you design the curriculum where it doesn't matter if they use AI? You say, Dana, when you have like, what is your subjective experience of interacting with the electrical team that you worked with, and how did you come to this? How did this report come into existence? What were the stages where we have to update along the way? Finding and understanding their ways where we can build the curriculum so if they have access or not, they're still going to learn. And Justin and I are very sensitive to some rural areas, Dana, don't have the technological resources, especially in North Carolina, to it. So we have to account for that variation in availability of different students. And that's other things that we've addressed in this book that I'm so proud of. It covers almost all, it covers from the individual level of working with the student, it comes from the teacher's level of how to improve their effectiveness with it ethically, it comes from the administrative level of how do we administrate this and minimize liability risks that could come down the pike. And all of these have been addressed to start thinking about in this book.
Yeah. This book is really a balancing tool. To me, I look at it and I think, okay, if I could at least grasp some of these concepts, even at a very basic level, I'm actually in a better balanced position. And the more I read it, the more I understand, the more balanced I am. And I think that's one of the problems with our society. We tend to be a society of extremes. We're overbalanced. Either we hate this thing because it's going to destroy the planet, or we're worshiping it as a god. It's we need to have balance. And I think this is a very fundamental, important tool in allowing us to have balance in this whole world of AI. And to be honest, this technological uh, improvement in what we're encountering now with AI is different than anything else we've ever had. It is different. We can't say it's not. It's not like VHS tape versus the other tapes. This is life-changing stuff. So I think it's imperative that we approach it from, okay, yeah, I need to, might be a little uncomfortable, but I need to establish some balance, a framework where I can then better evaluate what do I need to do.
This fear factor of it's going to take my job, that's been around for a while, and it's understandable. In every single major innovation that's occurred throughout history, people have worried it's going to take my work away. It's going to, I think it, I think it's more accurate to say, yeah, it's going to disrupt and change many occupations. Some will happen faster than others. For students, oh my, and teachers, okay, oh my gosh, to your point, Justin, if they read the book, they adopt some of these principles, and I'm more AI efficient as a high school student looking to get into a college or a community college or university, whatever, I'm going to have an advantage. I think the admissions people are going to start to measure this if they're not already. What's your AI proficiency? Okay, I'm speculating on that. You guys know better than I do. But so jobs are going to change, occupations are changing. We're seeing it in workplace now, but it doesn't mean you're going to be unemployed unless you put your head in the sand and do not adopt some of these tools. And then one final example here, uh, the when the nail gun came out for carpentry, okay, people were worried, okay, I'm no longer going to be needed with my hammer as a carpenter. And what did we find? No, it just sped up productivity. And we still have a shortage of carpenters today. Okay, a shortage. So, I don't think anyone buys this argument that it's going to totally decimate all jobs. I think it's going to change jobs over time. It is happening. I think the net benefit could be like any other innovation where actually a few more new jobs are created that we cannot now imagine, rather than we're all, everyone's going to be on mass unemployment. I think that's an exaggeration, just a humble opinion based on history. I think the other thing is, you think about teachers adopting AI in the classroom. Holy cow. if they use it appropriately, how much more efficient, they have more time at home for their family. They have, they can get things done faster, easier. Their teachers, from what I understand, are very stretched. My kids are all grown now, but I know even back when my kids were young, they were stretched with what they're expected to do in terms of getting things done throughout the day and the week. And AI can, what's the number? 15 to 20% more productivity, generally speaking, easily.
I do have to add one point. The person who used the hammer who refuses to learn how to use the nail gun might have a little disadvantage. And that's why it's important
Yeah.
that we be aware of what's going on. It is a new ocean. It is almost some new physics involved in it. There are new dynamics to the way the waves break and what goes on. So learning it's important, but also what we've learned is as you get more educated on this, you're fooled less by it. Now, it's constantly evolving, but we were just watching commercials together and we were going, that's almost all AI. And I realized there are a lot of people who haven't learned enough to know that yet. It's a tool for protecting you in understanding the world and in your career. And Justin, I believe for educators, it's kind of important for their career too. Because if you've got two educators and one's ethically, effectively, and using AI and knowing how to use it and not, and you've got one that doesn't, and you have to cut a job, who do you think's going to get cut first?
That's
So
right.
I think it gives an academic administrative quality to it that educators, just like the rest of us, have to be accountable, and we're giving them some tools to almost market themselves as their value, to show they're thinking this through. They're reading it and they bring it up to the school, say, have we thought about this risk? And that, to me, enhances their job security.
Yeah, Martin, to your point, I would guess, and this is just me hypothesizing, that in the future, we can expect to see licensing exams for educators or certifications that have a component of AI that you must master to have an educator's license. So I think this is almost like an aid to help me cross that bridge, because it's part of our world and it's going to be an increasingly visible part of an educator's world.
Yeah, it would be like saying, look, I know you've hired me as an engineer and as a designer, but I'm only going to use a slide rule. I'm not going to use a computer. I'm not going to use a calculator. I'll only work off a slide rule. I go, we won't get anything done here. You'll be outperformed by other people. A few of the topics, I think, the table of contents, looking at the table of contents, the beginning one is we've got some fundamental concepts to understand about AI. Then chapter 2, how large language models work. And then chapter 3, the pillars. We have multiple pillars in the educational system. They need to account for. So next one is student engagement, assignment design, feedback frameworks, differential instruction, a capstone case studies, design principles, and then AI ethics in the classroom, and then governance and institutional readiness, micro and macro levels, professional
Right.
development for instructors, understanding prompts and the concepts behind it, which is evolving. And then we have a nice little glossary of terms as well as other areas for you to make notes in it. So it's a semi workbook.
Everything's designed to really take someone who, at this point, most everyone's heard of it, so you already have a foundational base, but really it's written from a way to take someone who may not know much about it or wants to really start from scratch and build the fundamentals. The book builds off of an understanding of some of the concerns around AI and how it can be perceived, and then it builds on to some understandings of what is a language model, what is prompting. It really teaches you a little bit, at least to get some terms in front of you to where you can expand on later. But it does look at the individual student, the individual instructor. What are some places to start? How can you start really integrating it into your classroom, maybe then your team, your division, and then institutional? And chapter 8 is one I really like that you mentioned, Diogenes, is the reason that I really look at trades is because trades is adapting it and adopting it in a way that isn't seen across the board, and it's because it is another tool. And to really go into a comment you made earlier, I grew up in the trades. I grew up extremely rural. I'm the first PhD that I've tracked back to the 1600s, probably ever in my family line. And so growing up, we learned a trade, and we didn't have, I mean, if you wanted to look on a forum, if any existed back in those days, you had to pick a time where the phone line wasn't being used so you can actually gain access to the internet. You had technical manuals. Everything was, did it work? Did it not work? And really still on a lot of industrial plants, farms today, you may have something as simple as, why is there this piece of metal at the top? And AI may not account for it. It may put a bearing on to a certain specification, but it doesn't realize that the way that piece of metal's there is because if not, the bird will make a nest, which is going to cut your capacity down to 25% of the life of that bearing, or you're going to have a surprise one day because a bird decided to put a nest on a moving piece of equipment. AI is not going to account for that. There's that human element. And so we perceive things differently. Everything is a tool. It's like MacGyver personified in the trades. And so how do you use that in adapting it to a discipline that already sees everything as a tool? And so it's able to adapt it more quickly. And for example, there, some of the things that we were doing here, so during the day, my persona is director of AI strategy and innovation with a community college, and then I'm an AI innovator for the system for North Carolina. And so what we do here is not just how can we use it in a syllabus or in curriculum, how can we use it in internal workflows? How can we use it to create a better governance and institutional policy with procedures? But on top of that, it's our educational partners, whether that's K-12, workforce development, industry partners. How can we integrate it with them so that way we can expand? I'm working with a industry partner right now where we're looking at their internal workflows, design, architecture, because what we're doing is we're not just preparing students, we're not just preparing policy and procedure, we're also working to prepare industry partners so that when our students graduate, they can walk into an industry that's going to be welcoming, understand the value of these students, and understand how to integrate them in. And so it's really a holistic environment. And I really think this book, like Martin was talking about, going from a bottom up build and going from the fine grain to the larger picture, the micro to the macro, prepares this to kind of be infectious, because that's in a positive way. That's how it is, how I'm seeing it in education. It's infectious. As soon as one instructor does something that saves them 10 hours a week, Dana, another instructor wants to know what that is so they can save 10 hours. And next thing you know, the chair and the dean are starting to see something happen within their program, and they say, what is going on? And then they're on fire, and it grows and it spreads. I've seen where a teacher is apprehensive toward AI, and a student shows them something that they did. And next thing you know, the instructor next term is integrating it in their classroom. And so if we can use this guide to really help prepare anybody who may come in contact to it, then as that wildfire, that grassroots wildfire starts to spread, we already have the plan that's in place for anybody to pick up and say, okay, we have the passion, now we have the plan.
The drive process. It's
Mhm.
the system is not going to just kind of take over and know what to do. The system doesn't have emotions. It can't select patients. And these are some of the things that they went through. So I think students that are even looking at, professional trades, lawyers. Okay, I don't think lawyers are going away now. Paralegals are being hit, and yes, lawyers will be affected, but I think you're always going to need that human-driven lawyer to kind of oversee things. The other point I think that you guys are driving home with this is that, and we've seen this in business, is that the AI, interestingly enough, is making workers, and I think students too, same thing, to be to be better at the human skills. We talked about
Mhm.
having better critical thinking. You guys have alluded to this a lot. Better critical thinking, better collaboration skills, all that kind of stuff. So this isn't where AI replaces, what I'm hearing you say is replaces the curriculum. It modifies it and will probably require the teachers to even focus more on the human relation
Mhm.
skills, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. And so the fabricated guard on the piece of machinery is the unexpected bleed in a surgical room, is the intricate legal case that's not been present for 100 years and keeps us from full AI, us being Chris Pratt sitting in a chair being judged by an AI judge, to having someone who I can relate to and is empathetic to my case still there, even if, say, an AI assistant is being used by the judge to pull up all the details. We still have a organic biological judge with empathy and understanding of the human condition who's making the final decision. But as Dana just said, it's having it in the curriculum to show the surgical student how they can conduct a surgery in Tokyo from an office in San Francisco via a long distance surgery, to how does the judge verify and identify hallucinations in the data so they don't have a mistrial because they trusted a hallucination. They were able to verify the data from an assistant. That's still incredibly relevant, and I don't see how we can really transition to a full automated AI future like some professionals or some industry experts think we will, and yet still really be able to call us human. And so I think what we need to focus on, and that's what this book does drive on too, is the philosophy of we have to keep it human driven and human centered, not AI centered.
I think unless there's a way that by embracing AI, we become silicon life forms and the world is not run by organic carbon-based life forms, I just don't think there's a danger of that. I mean, we're not going to become silicon life forms because we use AI. I think what we will do is appreciate our humanity a whole lot more
Right.
because of the threat we perceive, and I think that's going to actually be a benefit to our society. Um, so yeah, it's almost like in the next book you guys write, the first chapter should be called "The World's Not Flat," because I need to be prepared for the fact that what I'm about to read is not going to be threatening me. It's going to be opening up my mind to accept some really incredible, powerful future possibilities if I'm open to them.
One of the things that I'm most proud of is how much work Justin and I, and with Dana's help too, have done to test these things in the real world. And this is something we were early adopters, and we were working from small businesses to Justin's work in the classrooms to studying it at a local level, global level, and others. And I mean, Justin has stories of helping an electrical company use AI to be more profitable and effective. And we have case after case of working with this. So we've been in the trenches working with them. A police department that was able to draft up an emergency policy that had to be updated, that then had the skills to know what was right and what wasn't. It was so exciting. We were in a classroom and he got his boss on the line. You can't believe the project that should have taken let's say a week, we just did it in the classroom and got it started, and then how it would save time, but still that human in the lead in every single case. That's critical. And also understanding that we're passing data on to something outside the school. What does that mean? How do you do that safely? All of these things we've checked, we've tested. We are guinea pigs of ourselves, aren't we, Justin? To get out,
Mhm.
our role is break it fast and learn from it. Is how we approach all this. So it's a lot of hours and hours and hours of work of testing in the real world. This is from our experiences and our research, not just we research the topic on it. It's available now on Amazon, so you can get your copy, and excited to hear how it's affecting your education, your world. Of course, we love reviews. We just got one, Justin. Shout out to the person who gave us our first review. We launched that. I looked up this morning, went, wow, we haven't even officially launched, and there's a review there already. So very grateful for that. When you get value, let others know. We're available not only for the book, but training that supports it. You tell us what it is. We love customizing things to the environment and what's needed.
So again, I think the main concept here is keep an open mind, make sure you're driving, question everything, just as we would any other time. If you have any type of gut feeling or uncertainty on if it should go in, don't put it. Make sure you protect student data, protect your data. Don't think that just because AI is different that we're going to treat it any differently in the classroom or in the office as we have any other tool. And so don't overthink it. And I really hope that this guide helps us to really sit back and realize, don't overthink it. It's an opportunity, not a threat. And that there is a path, but it does involve all of us coming together to work toward it.
And thanks for Diogenes and Dana for joining us to add questions and comments along the way. We appreciate that tremendously.
It was a pleasure. Thanks for having us.
Good luck. And people, buy the book.
Yeah, it's good. Okay, great, gang.